Conversation. Nigeria ranks 103 out of 121 on the Global Hunger Index. Well, Nigeria has been ranked 103 out of 121 countries in the 2022 Global Hunger Index, a position that signifies that the nation Nigeria has a level of hunger that is serious. The Global Hunger Index was jointly published by the German-based Wealth Hunger Live and Dublin-based Concern Worldwide last week, Friday. The report, which ranks countries by severity, gave Nigeria a score of 27.3, a hunger level falling under the serious category. Now, the index has 5 levels of hunger under which each country falls. You have the low, the moderate, the serious, the alarming, and the extremely alarming category. Now, this is the second consecutive year in which Nigeria's ranking on the scale remains the same. And of course, for those who don't know, let me quickly put this out there, that the Global Hunger Index is a tool for comprehensively measuring and tracking hunger at global, regional, and national levels. Now, the scores are based on the values of 4 components, and they include undernourishment, child stunting, child wasting, and child mortality. The 2022 report indicates that 12.7% of Nigeria's population is currently undernourished. 12.7% of our population is undernourished. 6.5% of children under the age of 5 in Nigeria today are wasted, while 31.5% of children also under the age of 5 are stunted. All right. It also indicates that 11.4% of children in Nigeria today die before their 5th birthday. Okay, so this issue of hunger, food crisis in Nigeria is actually not quite new. We've been reporting that for a while now, and previous reports also have already predicted a hunger crisis in Nigeria and the effect it will have on people, especially for children. Okay, now I also want to quickly make some clarification so that people understand what we're talking about. Now, when you talk about undernourishment, it measures the amount of the population that have insufficient calorie intake, while child stunting analyzes the number of children under the age of 5 who have a low height for their age. That is, children who are not growing, in height. Their growth in height is not commensurate with their age. Also, when you say child wasting, we are indicating the number of children who are under 5 years old who have low weight for their height. All right, so their body mass, their weight is quite low compared to their age and also their height. So I dare say that child wasting and child stunting, they are like opposites of each other. But then that is the situation we are in right now. So the food crisis we're experiencing, or the hunger the country is experiencing right now, is affecting more of children, especially children who are under the age of 5. Prince Chilaka.
Well, with what has happened, or what has been happening across the entire country, we all know that call them terrorists, call them banditry, call them whatever, call them kidnappers, who have formed the habit of kidnapping, killing, destroying farmlands. With all of that, how do you expect food to be available? Now, moving a step further, even when the food is available, how many Nigerians today can really afford a balanced diet? So it's most times when we're placed on a scale like these international organizations, and some people will tell you, oh, they're just talking rubbish. They're not talking rubbish, because when we have this mindset of, first of all, whatever you want to talk about, you look at Lagos, you look at Port Harcourt, you look at maybe Calabar. I'm looking at states where you go to the capital, you're seeing a different lifestyle. But
Lagos, Port Harcourt, maybe Abuja.
Yeah. But these lifestyles do not reflect what you find in the villages where you don't have water, clean water to start with. You don't have good housing for people to live in. And then you're talking about food. You know, how many? A man who earns 30,000 naira a month, minimum wage of 30,000 naira a month, you know, you need to take a lot of things into consideration. Out of that 30,000, you're expecting to pay his house rent. You're expecting to pay his electricity consumption rent, a bill. You're expecting to take care of his children medically. You know, so it's a whole lot, because the whole system is not working. And because it's not working, who suffers? It's like when you have a war. It is not the big men who sit to, you know, discuss, engineer, and get the war on the table. No, they don't suffer it. Look at what's happening in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine. The big guys are not suffering the war, but the poor people are the ones suffering it. And so when you talk about hunger in itself, who are the ones going to suffer? The children. If a parent does not have something to eat, how will they take care of the children? They need to eat first and make sure that they are okay to be able to provide for their children.
Okay.
So it's a whole lot, and it goes beyond just food. We need to look at, in terms of medicals, how many hospitals are functional? How many hospitals are there for children? How many, you need to take also into consideration how many women who get pregnant and die as a result of childbirth. Nobody's talking. It's part of hunger. How many women today are going for antenatal? How many? So when you talk about the strongness of a child, don't forget that the child grows from inside the mother's womb. If the mother doesn't eat well, that child will not grow well. So we need to stop talking about hunger. We need to talk about things that would add value to the Nigerian lives.
Okay. Thank you, Prince Chilaka. We'll come back and take a look at it from the global level, because it looks like most countries around the world right now, you know, are on the same page. More like, you know, when you talk about this issue of food crisis and food security worldwide. But then let's bring in my virtual guest into the conversation at this point. Dr. Sunny Obi Maduka, thanks for joining us. I would like to hear your opinion on this recent report on the Global Hunger Index, especially indicating that Nigeria is ranking quite poorly on that particular ranking, and also how this is affecting the majority of Nigerians, especially children, you know, right now. Let's have your take on that, Dr. Maduka.
Patience, and foremost, let me appreciate everyone who has prayed and who has seen me through all the travel period. But then let me just say thank you all, especially the Galaxy family. Thank you. Now back to the topic. I think food is the most necessity aspect of life. You know, there are basic necessities for every government, and most of those necessities include security. You talk about food, you talk about shelter, and you talk about health. In this that you just said, there are two things that are missing there. We talk about food, and of course, you talk about health, because you talk about stunted growth, and you talk about food shortage. So we're talking about two things here: food and health. A government is supposed to provide such thing. Like I said, we're in trouble because the people are no more going to farm. Terrorists everywhere, and of course, there's no way anybody can go to farm in order to produce. And if you don't produce, what happens? We come into shortage, and that's exactly what is happening today. There's a shortage of everything, apart from food. A shortage of manpower, even in the medical industry. So we need to look at this from the perspective of globalization. And of course, the 103 index being given to us is even better. It's good. We are more than that. We could up to rank to up to 140, because a lot of people are really suffering. Just like Chilaka said, it's only cities you can see people smiling. If you go to rural areas and you go for even a visit, you come back home empty because people are there hungry, and there's no way you can look at them without doing something, you know, just to ameliorate their suffering. So we have a lot of problems, and it's unfortunate that the government has not been able to own up. And of course, there's no even plan I expect this government to give us an economic blueprint on how we can tackle food crisis. It is not about paperwork. It is about the tangibility of what you're saying. How many people can afford a bag of rice of 28,000 now? Look at our inflationary rate, 20.7. So look at the value of Naira. So even if you are being paid 30,000 and you buy a bag of rice, 28,000, what else is remaining? So there's a lot of things to be done. And of course, we have to look at things from the global perspective. Let's not shut down only about the food and health. Let's look at the security too. What happened to the security? What happened was if the security of the nation is being tilted or being, inferred as a failed nation. So we need to look at this. And of course, the shelter. Most of the people that are supposed to cultivate these farms are in IDPs. When you look at the food basket of this country, the North Central is in disarray. And this is a place that will have food basket in this country. So the people are not producing, instead people are now staying in ID camps. So there's a lot to be done. And of course, I pray that government, probably not this government anyway, the successive government will come out with a blueprint that will have a total overview of what these Nigerians stand to gain in the necessities, the basic necessity for every Nigerian. And those basic needs I mentioned are, first of all, the security of lives and properties, 2, health, shelter, and of course, how do we talk about food crisis?
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Maduka. I'll come back to you in a minute. All right, let me come back to my studio guest now and talk about the proactiveness of government, in tackling this issue of food insecurity vis-a-vis food crisis in Nigeria. Now, last year, 2021 precisely, UNICEF reported and also revealed that Nigerian children under the age of 2 were lacking the food and the nutrients they need to thrive and grow well. All right. Now, another report followed that one, this time by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, that predicted that by August this year, 19.4 million people will face food insecurity in Nigeria. All right. They also went on to report that 14.4 million people, including 385,000 displaced people in 21 states in Nigeria, Abuja inclusive, were already in a food crisis as at the time of that report. Now, these figures and these reports are not just released out there, just for the fun of it, because they want to play with figures and all of that. They're supposed to be out there in the public purview so that the government can begin to plan and begin to act accordingly, all right, to prevent a crisis. But here we are now. The situation is getting worse. Inflation is at the heights, over the rooftop. It looks like government hasn't done anything or much in tackling this problem. Let's talk about the proactiveness of government in addressing these issues.
Has any government of Nigeria been proactive? Which one? Mention one of them. I haven't seen anyone. A few years back when we're still growing up, we used to hear about development rolling plans and all of that. 5 years development plan, 6 years this plan, that, and if you had followed history then and followed governance then, you understand that those were times when we could say government was being proactive. Now, take for instance what's happening across the country right now. Flood. The flood is there. It's washing away farmlands. People have planted, preparing to go for harvest. What has happened to it? The question is, why is it that every year when Cameroon opens their dam, we get flood in Nigeria? Why? I was reading some article.
And this happens every year.
Yes, I was reading some article.
They should have actually closed up that barrier.
I was reading some article yesterday, and I was saying to myself, what manner of leaders have we had in this country? Why is it that our leaders from A to Z are wicked and non-patriotic? I read somewhere they said that when the dam was to be constructed in Cameroon, it was also agreed that the dam should be constructed in somewhere in Adamawa State to cushion the effect of whatever water that comes from the dam in Cameroon. I think they say as far back as 1977 or so, the Nigerian government did nothing. The Nigerian government, like you say, just took everything about that and shoved it somewhere. And then today, the floods are getting worse. And government is shouting, NEMA, go and do this, go and give them relief. Are we in a country, we're not in a country where all that our government waits for is to give the Nigerian people relief. No. The proactiveness of governance is to look at an issue, plan ahead of it, know that there's a problem coming, and find a solution to that problem. But no, we've only had governments that are reactive. Everything governance in this country has always been reactive. They wait for something to go bad. They begin to plan on how to remedy something that has gone from rotten to bad. It is terrible. So for me, government has not been proactive. We've not had government, we've not had a system, or we've not had leaders who are patriotic. Because if we have leaders who are patriotic, I'm telling you, Nigeria is a country that is blessed. God has blessed us in such a way that year in, year out, Nigeria should not beg for food. No Nigerian should beg for food. Not one Nigerian should beg for food. But what do we have? We have a system that is not working. And our leaders have not sat back to say, we've been doing this thing consistently like this, and we're getting the same result, but this is the kind of result we should get. Why are we not doing it this way? Why are we not looking outside the box? Why is it that everything about governance in this country is the box? And a government comes in, you forget whatever good your predecessor has started, you bring in your own program. It's like there's a competition amongst leaders. And at the end of the day, they fall. They don't give us what we want. They don't give Nigerians a sense of belonging. So when we talk about hunger, when you say that children 2 years, they are malnourished, I said to you when we started, I said, a child that will grow tall starts from the mother's womb. A child that will be stunted starts from the mother's womb. It is what the mother takes in that it transfers to that child. So if the mother doesn't eat well, how do you expect that child, when giving birth to grow well? And then, not forgetting that once the child is also born, what is there to give to the child? Nothing.
Thank you, Prince Chilaka. Back to you, Dr. Maduka. Now, major countries around the world are also, battling this issue of food crisis. I mean, we have seen on international media protests after protests from powerful countries, seemingly, who have been actually talking about this issue of food crisis. The recent one being in Paris, where there are protests over high cost of living. Now, I'd like to ask, what makes the Nigerian situation peculiar when we're talking about this issue of food crisis, hunger, and every other thing around that?
Our peculiarity is very, very clear. I think most Nigerian leaders are lucky to rule Nigerians because our resilience, our docility is something that you cannot fathom in any country. You talk about Spain, you talk about some of them will tell you that they cannot at all stomach what we are stomaching as citizens in this country. Even as they are rioting, the government, there's something about basic necessity, and the government will still give them. So when you talk about rioting, it is easy, even Togo, because of an increase in price of bread. In Ghana, because of an increase of kenke, people can come out and riot. Of course, here, because of sentiments, we don't, because we are looking at who is leading us. So if it's from my place, so I don't need to distort his regime, even when Nigerians are dying. So the problem we have, as I said, is that most of our leaders are lucky to have Nigerians as citizens because we can take in anything, every rubbish from every leader. When Chilaka was talking about food policy, and it's true, there's no food policy in this country, be it long term or short time. So what we do in this country is try and error. Oh, let's do this in this year. Let's do this. So there's nothing we can look at and I say, this is the trajectory. This is where we are going. And we keep on every year doing the same thing and expecting different results. It's not working that way. I did a paper recently, I think a few years ago in Anambra, where I did something I call comparative analysis and advantage of on state to states in this country. In this country, we can do what I call comparative on zones. Let's look at zones. What can this zone produce? For instance, the North Central is food basket. How do government help? How do federal government help through loan syndication from central bank? How do CBN help in a few industries in Aba, Oka? How do government help in rice production in Ebonyi State? How do government do in cotton production in Jos? But we don't. What we do, even in our loan syndication, is man no man. So we have now come to understand there's need for us to have a comparative advantage of each state, and what can we do as a country to ensure that each state is being helped to ensure that there's food sufficiency in this country. We don't do that. As of today, if you watch, the CBN are giving loans to many people. Even now, they cannot even recover 20% of the loans they've given on agriculture sector. So you ask yourself, are these loans being given on individual basis or on production basis? Secondly, let me come again. There's another thing I'm looking at. Citizens' proactiveness. Let's not look at only the government, the citizens. What are we doing? You have your backyard there. You have some area. You can put something. You can plant something. You don't need the government every time to say, oh, the government. No. In those days, most of our families, let me look at it, when they have extended family, what a man is known for is how much farm he has. That is where he's being measured. But today, everybody is running for white-collar jobs. The youths are no more going into agriculture. So the people that are in agriculture, I see the same old people. So we have this substance agriculture sector. So it will not help. We must go into mechanized agriculture that is policed, not just to give loans on people that they don't even produce anything. So we need to change our mentality and of our food policy to ensure that mechanized food production is inducted or executed or policy initiated, so that we don't equally every day keep on looking for one banana in one place and tomato in another place. If we have land, look at if you are traveling from Lagos to East, the whole of Ondo State, you look at the massive land there and you ask yourself, what are we doing? And we are hungry. And you talk about what is globally happening. No, it's not everywhere that is having problem. We are oil producing country. In most oil producing country, let me take it that way, we don't have this food crisis because their resources are being managed well to the citizens' benefits. But today we have oil that is being stolen. We have economic indices that is showing that our oil is being, I don't even know, NIPs has not remitted anything for the past 6 months. These are the things that will cushion effect on the citizens. But when there's no money coming in that way, then the problem is that it's going to trickle to everybody. So the country is in serious mess. And of course, we have to go back to the drawing board and see how we can remedy this country from total collapse. It's not about food alone. It's about the entirety of every governance systems that is not working well. Thank you.
Dr. Maduka. All right, so Nigeria's hunger crisis has majorly been attributed to the insecurity ravaging many parts of the country, and according to researchers, unless Nigeria addresses and puts an end to all of our many security challenges, more people will go hungry, I beg your pardon, in years to come. Now, this particular report released on Friday also forecasts that by the year 2030, there will still be hundreds of millions of people experiencing hunger, thereby failing to meet set targets by the United Nations. Okay, so let's not forget the Russia-Ukraine war also further increased the global issues concerning food, fuel, and even fertilizer prices. And of course, this has the potential to contribute to food shortages come 2023 and even beyond if we don't take action right now. Meanwhile, the National Bureau of Statistics has come out to say that disruption in the food supply in Nigeria has pushed headline inflation to 20.77%, and that is in the month of September. All right. Now, likely factors for the increase in inflation year on year are the disruption in the supply of food products, an increase in import costs due to the persistent currency depreciation, and a general increase in the cost of production. Simply put, the cost of living in the country right now is not friendly. Inflation at 20.77. That's the highest I've seen. The highest I've seen in my years of existence as a Nigerian.